Sean, Texas hangs on to beat Clemson 38-24. Clemson almost snuck their way back in. A great game by Cade Klubnik, who looked fantastic in the second half. I know that he didn't play a super clean game, but made a number of huge plays that almost put together a comeback for the Clemson Tigers. I think the biggest question for me, Sean, that I got to ask you, do you think Texas is a legit contender? I feel like the argument could be made for Notre Dame. The argument could have been made for Penn State. I just don't know if watching what Texas did, slop around in the second half, give up a bunch of uncontested tight catches, and to get worked down the field by this passing attack makes me feel good about what they're going to do in tougher matchups.
Yeah, I needed to see more from Ewers in this one, and you could push back on me all you want and say, Sean, why do you need to see more? We had two running backs.
Well, wait, I thought that he was the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, he's the future in the way of pushing a quarterback that needs to be pushed.
He's gonna go back for a sixth year so he can.
Let's all hope that we get to see the big arms
weird
stick around
to students.
Texas, though, you could push back and say, wow, he didn't really need to have a superb game because Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner just absolutely went off, combining for over 150 yards and 4 touchdowns. So if Texas can do that, then you could make an argument that, yeah, maybe someone could stop them. I mean, if they can commit to stopping that run game, which would maybe open up the pass game. But it didn't feel like a full Texas performance yet again. Was it a good Texas performance? Yes. Did Clemson almost backdoor cover and make the whole house angry?
Yeah.
They came within inches of doing so.
Thank you for that hook, by the way. I said that in the first quarter. I said the hook is making me feel pretty good about this.
I really appreciated the hook. It was good enough. Look, it's a CFP win. How nitpicky can we get if we're moving along in the bracket? Like, we have to eventually be realistic if teams keep on moving on before we lay off some of the judgment and understand that, these are playoffs. We see it in hockey, MLB, NBA, NFL. We just see that teams can get hot and you just can't disparage a win like you can in the regular season. But am I sitting here after today thinking Texas, like I have more faith in Texas than I do Penn State? Probably not. From what I saw, Penn State gives me more hope, also because they have an easier path into the next round.
Right, and where this comes down to, their secondary gives up all these big plays in the second half against an improving young receiving core for Clemson, but certainly not a good one. They are not at the level that they could be next year. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's an ass receiving group, because it's not. It's well recruited. It's just not a productive one, especially against bigger opponents this year. They were non-existent in some of their tougher matchups against South Carolina, against Georgia at the beginning of the season. They didn't do anything. For them to give up all those big plays to their against their outside corners, that's where the concern comes into play. And we're looking down the barrel of who the next opponent that they could see that's going to test them. It's not Arizona State. It's Oregon, who's Tez Johnson, and they have Evan Stewart. You think that they're not going to have more success than what we saw in the second half? Or you think that Dylan Gabriel couldn't go for 400 yards, especially after the man has already beaten you in the Red River rivalry? I don't know. I just don't feel good about the path and where things line up for Texas. It's a good win. I'm not trying to discredit the victory, because you finish out the game and winning is winning. A win is a win is a win. But at the same time, you feel like that they could have kicked their ass just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Especially after they did in the first half.
I know. But they had two. Blue averaged 10.4 a carry and Wisner 7.3. If they do that against Oregon, it'll be way closer than everyone thinks. If they average half of what they did combined tonight, then it would still be closer than expected. To put a pin in Clemson this year, Klubnik, I think he won't get talked about as much at the end of the year, because we obviously have the expanded playoff. There's more teams still competing in relevancy and in the news cycle, but he impressed me this year. I don't want to let it go unmentioned.
He's a dude for next year. Seriously.
For what I saw, for my expectations for him this year, my expectations for Clemson, which were low and low, what he did and to show that he had some boss up moments in him, and that he had some legitimate arm strength, arm pop, arm accuracy in him. It showed me a lot this year, and I would be optimistic if I was a Clemson fan if that dude's my quarterback next year.
Yeah, that's the last thing I want to agree with you here before we jump to the next game. I think that he has gotten better every single week, and especially down the stretch. And if those young receivers take the step that they need to, he could have a big season, and he could be like Drew and 45-year-old Quinn Ewers when he goes back to school and transfers to Michigan. He absolutely, Kate Klubnik could absolutely be a top 5 pick amongst this next upcoming class.